I've transferred the face and painted in the eyes and mouth with black and added some little highlights of white. Painted in some little hair strokes with white. We've transferred the pumpkin and I've painted that with white, and we've got her bow that's going to be placed right here, and that's painted with white. So the next step will be to put a layer of yellow over top the bow and the ribbon around her neck and the pumpkin. Here we've got all of our yellow based in, and I'm going to, before we work on the pumpkin and ribbon, well, that's still drying, let's finish up the face. And I want to dry brush a little bit of blush on the cheeks, and again I'm using just one of these round natural hair bristle brushes, and we're going to pick up a little bit of the orange because we want to use colors that are in our palette, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of this yellow to make sort of a coral color, which will be a good blush color for the ghost. So I don't want very much on my brush. I'm going to wipe some of that off, and again we're going to just work here on the cheeks and go in a circular motion just to deposit a little bit of that blush color here on the outer cheek. And pick up a little bit more orange. So you want to do just a little on each side. It's maybe not quite a dime size. So we've got a little bit of blush on our cheek. And you're better off starting with just a little bit. It's easier to add more than to take it off. Okay, so I think that's enough. And then we're going to float a little bit on each side of the mouth to add a little smile line. I've got my 1/4 inch angle, a little bit of the glazing medium on it, and I'm going to pick up just a teeny bit of black, and you want to brush that out because you don't want very much of it. So I'm going to get rid of a lot of that on my palette. And then we're going to just come here and float under these little smile lines on each side. You can do that on the other side. And I'm just coming under this little cheek line to make like a little V there. And just a little bit here under the lip to make like a little bottom lip or chin under the mouth. And then we can add just a hint of color. I'm going to use a little bit of this orange and just wash a little bit on that bottom lip. And a little here on the nose. Just a little bit watery. So that gives us just a touch of color on the face. I'm going to add some eyelashes of black. So I'm using a very fine liner. This is a 20-aught liner, and I'm watering that black paint down so it's very inky. And I'm going to just pull some little fine eyelashes out to the side. And you can do that on each side. So they're kind of sweep down and out. And stagger the length of them a little bit. I'm going to just very finely outline that sides of the mouth. Maybe just a bit on top of the nose and under the lip. And then just a couple little highlight dots. We're going to put one here on the nose and one here on the bottom lip. And maybe here on the hair. And the outer cheeks. So our face is done. To continue on, earlier I had painted the pumpkin and ribbons with a different color of yellow, and after I worked on it a little bit I decided I didn't like it, so sometimes you have to adjust. So I went back and base coated everything with white and then painted the yellow with Hansa yellow before I had used Indian yellow, and it just toned things down a little too much. And I think the Hansa yellow is a bright, more lemony yellow, and it'll look better with our greens and oranges. So the first thing we're going to do is work on the ribbon and the bow and the stem of the pumpkin. And I'm going to use the Hansa yellow and phthalo yellow green, which is this bright intense green here. Mine's starting to skim over a little bit, but you can see it's just a really bright, intense, transparent green. And then we're going to mix that with a little bit of the Hansa yellow to get a pretty lime green color. And you can vary how much green and yellow you mix together to come up with a green color that you like. But with the pumpkin, I wanted this to be just a really bright, intense green. It'll be a complement to the red-orange of the pumpkin. So I'm going to just come here along the ribbon. And again, we're going to work from the outer edge and just walk that color in towards the middle of the ribbon around the ghost neck. I've got a little bit of the glazing mix in my brush to help keep the paint workable for just a little bit longer than it normally would be. So once I get in about halfway, I'm going to flip the brush over and come from the opposite side. So again, the green is towards the outer edge, and we're just going to keep walking in towards the middle here. So the center area here is mostly yellow with just a very light green overlay. So we're going to set that aside. Well, we can go ahead and do the pumpkin stem. So let's work some here along the top edge of the pumpkin. And this is a much prettier green for this project. And I'm just going to pull it up on this outer edge of the stem. Soften your blend out. Okay, the rest, set that aside and let it dry. And we'll work on the bow. And add more paint as you need it. Mine's starting to tack up a little bit, so I'm going to pick up a little more of the green and yellow and some of the glazing mix. And let's see, lost my little guideline, so show you where I'm working at with some pencil lines. So we're going to first start, we just want to start defining the areas of the bow. So I'm going to come in here along the inside of the loop. We'll do that on both sides. And we'll come down here on this tail. Pick up a little more paint. And then we'll do it here on this one. This tail is coming in front of the loop, so we're going to shade here on the above the tail and put that shading on the loop of the bow. And come up along these outer edges of the bow on both sides. Do some here on the bottom of the center knot. Maybe we'll work some here on this bottom edge of this tail just so we have some green everywhere. So now I'm going to just let that greens tack up and we'll go back to our pumpkin and start adding some oranges to it. So I'm going to brush a layer of the glazing mix over the pumpkin. And we're going to pick up some of the orange and find a clean spot here on my palette. So I'm just side loading that brush with some orange, and we'll just work that down both outer edges. And while that is kind of wet, I'm just sort of working on the chisel edge of my brush, and I'm going to pull some sections down in that pumpkin. These are just sort of soft. You don't have to make them real nice and neat. And you can see I'm curving towards the outer edge of the pumpkin until I get to the center. Then you bring it down a little more straight, and then as you pass the center, you start curving out towards the other side to follow the contour. I just want them a little soft and smudgy. I think our ribbon feels dry, so we'll go back and add another layer of that green. We were using some of the phthalo green yellow. It says green yellow, but really it has a real blue-green look to it. And then I'm going to pick up some of the Hansa yellow and work that in. So that'll turn that a green yellow. Pinch that outer edge of my brush. And I'm just going to go back and rework over what we did previously. And each time you add a layer over it, it's going to get a little more intense and smoother. Again, we're walking that color in towards the center. Go back to our bow. Again, it's dry, and we're gonna just again repeat over the areas that we've done. We're gonna walk it in a little bit more this time. You can see each time I put a layer of this green on, I'm just working it a little bit more over top of that yellow so that eventually the bow is going to look more green than yellow. The yellow is just going to be a touch of a highlight. So you can continue doing that, probably another, maybe one more layer to get your greens built up. Then we'll do a little bit more shading on that by adding just a touch of the orange to the green to tone it down. Let's see, the pumpkin feels pretty dry, so we can go back and do a second layer of orange over the pumpkin. And again, as we add these multiple layers, we'll cover more of that yellow. And just going over top of the orange intensifies it and gives you a little more shading. I just want to get a light layer of orange over this whole pumpkin. So let's let that set up and dry. And go over that with one more coat of orange. I've added a couple more layers of the green and orange shading to my bow and the pumpkin. And also during the break, I added some little orange stripes to the ribbon and bow. They look a little dark on the camera, but they are the Paragon orange. And I did that before we start doing our shading and highlighting so that when we put that over, it'll tone down the edges of the bow. So the next thing we want to do is do a little more darker shading. The bow and everything is pretty intense right now, so I want to tone that down a little bit. And we can do that by shading with, again, a little spot where you can see on my dirty palette. I'll turn this around, see if I get a better spot. Look up here. So I'm just side loading my brush with a little bit of that phthalo green yellow. And then I'm going to pick up just a teeny touch of the orange in that. And that'll tone that green down some so that we can go back and add some shading that's just a little darker. And that will tone down the intensity of that green some. Add a touch more of that orange in it. And I'm walking that out just a little bit. You don't want to bring it out too much to the center. We'll do that a little bit on the bow here. going to go here under, just in the areas where we want the darkest shading to be. So I'm going to come here underneath the loop. Do a little bit of that on both sides. Underneath the knot. Maybe a little bit here in the inside the loop. The outer edge and here at the where it comes up to the knot. Just soften that down. Getting a little bit out here on this edge. And we'll do a little bit here on the left side of the pumpkin stem. And I'll do a little here, this top inner edge of the stem. We want to kind of give it that look of a, where it's been torn off the vine and has dried out a little bit. So we want to add a little bit of highlighting also. So I'm going to use a little bit of I'm going to use some white and a little tiny touch of the yellow. Again, you want this pretty fine. You don't want it too chalky. So I'm just going to put some little highlights of this where I want to call attention to some of the edges. I'll do a little bit here on the bottom of this one. So you can see that now. And then I'm going to do just a little bit here in the center of the bow, the ribbon around the neck. So my paint is going towards the center and I'm walking out to the side a little bit. Then I'll flip that over so it meets and just highlight that center just a little bit. And we can pump that up a little bit with some dry brushing once that dries. So there you can see our bow's starting to look pretty dimensional. And we can add a little bit of that to this pumpkin stem here at the top. If you get it on the background, just clean it up at the edge of your brush. So we can also do some of that yellow and white highlighting here on the pumpkin. I'm just going to pull some towards the top over to about the middle. Just kind of following along those little orange lines that we had done. I'll pick up a little more white. And I'm again working sort of on the chisel edge of my brush, just dragging some highlights in there. And I just keep picking up a little bit more white and just trying to strengthen those just a little bit so we get those little pops of white, like light shining on that shiny pumpkin. Now we could use a little more shading on the pumpkin too, especially on this left side. So I'm going to use some of the orange, and we're going to do similar to what we did on the bow. We're going to use orange and we're going to mix a touch of the green into it to give us this darker, earthy orange color. It almost makes like a kind of a burnt sienna or burnt umber color. And let's float some of that down the shaded side of the pumpkin. I'm just coming all the way along the bottom. You can see how that just tones the orange down just a little bit. And I can put a little bit over here on the right bottom. Just don't bring it up as high because we want that to be our highlighted side. And again, if you want to get some more highlights of the white, you know, you can even go to a liner brush and drag some little lines of that white. I'll put some out here on that edge. I'll put a little bit over this direction, but I'm not going to bring it down as far, just keep it here towards the top. Back to our bow again. We can punch up the highlights just a little bit more by using the round natural bristle brush and do some dry brushing. So I'm just adding some white, and I'm gonna just add some soft highlights on this bow by dry brushing. And the dry brushing just helps to soften everything down. Add a little more white, and I'm gonna come here in the center of this ribbon around the neck and add a little stronger white highlight. We can do a little bit here on the pumpkin, soften that down some. And then I would go back and do one more layer of shading here on the left side of the pumpkin. And then you can, you know, add a jack-o'-lantern face, you know, just by painting that in like we did the ghost face, just with black. Use a small round or a liner brush, or you can leave it as just a natural pumpkin if you want. This piece has just a little, I don't know if you can see that in the camera. You can glue on your little base for your tea light. We wanted to add some more decoration to the dress. I got so caught up in the pumpkin and the face and all that I forgot about that. And I'm using just a stylus, and I'm going to use white paint, and then you can add little decorations around the edges of the dress. You know, give it a real little lacy look. So I'm just doing like a little 3-dot pattern. You can space that out. It gives it kind of the look of eyelet. And you're going to do that along each row. If you want to add any more little dots of eyelet, you know, you can add some up here in the body of her dress. I'm just going to space them out kind of in checkerboard fashion. Maybe you want to do this on the top layer of the dress, but you know, on the lower ones you'll leave them more plain and just have the pattern on the border. But just have fun and you know, come up with your own little designs for the dress and lace pattern. The only other things that I would do to finish mine off is, you know, after I do my little lace patterns on the bottom, is do a little bit of outlining on the edges of the pumpkin. And oftentimes I will do that first with black and then maybe go over it with white, just to have a little bit of contrast. And you can use either a real fine point felt tip pen or, you know, use your liner brush, but just you want that very sketchy little line work, but it'll just define the edges and make them a little more crisp. You know, you can do some little texture on the stem, and your paint needs to be very inky. Mine's getting a little dry. I'm just going to come along, just very loosely outline the edges. I don't try to stay right on the edges. It comes off and on. You know, the line can be broken. You know, but just, you can decide how much detail you want to put on. Maybe define these little sections just a little more. But you can see that adds a lot of detail. And then even go back with some of the white paint. Sometimes I like to kind of go along some of the black lines with some white, and it just adds like a little highlight, so it doesn't seem quite so heavy. And you can add some little loopy stuff here around the edges of the layers of your dress, like little scallop edges. Just anything to make her dress more frilly. You see, that looks real cute. You know, I would do the same thing on the bow. You can, you know, outline with white and black, just to give it a little bit more definition. So say I did the white there, maybe I'll switch off and do some edges with black. You see how that just defines it a little bit more than this side. You know, I like the little loose outlining. So have fun finishing this, and I hope you enjoyed our little ghost project.